Hello guys, welcome. This is GMDSS series part 3 video. So on GMDSS equipment, we do daily test, weekly test, monthly test and yearly test, which is done by show. So in this video, we are going to see how to do weekly test and monthly test. So for doing weekly test or monthly test, we always have to do daily test. For daily test, I've already made a video. You can check out my previous video that is on daily test. The link is in the description box and I've shown everything in detail. So now, considering that you have already watched the video or you already know how to do daily test or what all things need to be done in daily test, we'll continue further for showing how to do weekly test. So after doing daily test, then as per my GMDSS record book, I have to send a DSC message from my MFHF transceiver to a core station and get an acknowledgement from a core station. So this is my MFHF transceiver, and from this I'll try to get an acknowledgement from a core station. So what we have to do is enter your volume ALRS 1345. So this is my digital publication. I'll enter this and search the core station from which you can get an acknowledgement. Try to search for the nearest core station. So my vessel is in Mediterranean Sea. With respect to that, Madrid is the core station from which I can get an acknowledgement because I've already tried that. So I'll enter Madrid. Now once I enter, this is the core station I'll enter. Now remember that from all core stations you will not get an acknowledgement. So you must know from which core station you can get an acknowledgement. Now you can see Madrid is having facility for DSC HF 8 MHz and 12 MHz. So on 8 MHz and 12 MHz frequency I can get an acknowledgement. So I'll try to do those tests on one of these two frequency one by one. So this is the station ID, core station ID. So I'll come to my MFHF equipment, press DSC, test, station ID, enter the station ID. Now as we know that it replies on 8 MHz or 12 MHz. So I'll start doing my test with 8 MHz. So I'll enter this and I'll try to do this test with this frequency. If I don't get an acknowledgement from this frequency, then I'll switch to 12 MHz. Once you have sent the test message, you can see there is a printout over here that you have sent a test message. So we'll wait for the test message acknowledgement. Now it is saying that waiting for test acknowledgement. Now you can see I have received the acknowledgement. This is the sound when you will hear when you will receive an acknowledgement from core station. So I'll press cancel. Now you can see here test acknowledgement from the core station. So that's the ID from which I got an acknowledgement. So that's how you have to do. You have to try doing this test on core stations. Now here you can see that's a printout also from the core station that I have received the acknowledgement. So now I've received this acknowledgement on 8 MHz. If not, I would have switched to 12 MHz and from MFHF equipment I have transmitted on 12 MHz. And it is not necessary that this core station will reply to you. If it does not, then you have to try and find out the next core station. For example, in Mediterranean Sea, the other core station from which you can get an acknowledgement is Istanbul Radio. So let me just open and show you. So now if we open Istanbul Radio, then we can see that it is having facility for DSC, VHF and MFHF as well. Now if you want to try out the test with Istanbul Radio, then check how far your vessel is. For example, if you are 400 nautical mile away from Istanbul Radio, try on 4 MHz. If you are 600 nautical mile, then try 6 MHz and so on. Now there are two questions which many people ask. First is, do we have a list of stations from which we can get an acknowledgement? So as far as I have seen, I have never seen such a list. So this is the list which I have made based on my personal experience. It does not cover whole areas, so you can refer to this list also. Second is this list which is for USA. If you are anywhere around USA within these core stations, then you can try out on 4 MHz. You will certainly get acknowledgement in US areas. Second question is, what if we don't get an acknowledgement from any core station? So the answer is simple, that if you have tried on 2-3 core stations on 2-3 different frequencies, and if you still haven't got an acknowledgement, the best thing is to try the acknowledgement from any ships in vicinity. After MFHF DSC test, what we'll do is we'll file these records in our GMDSS logbook later on. Now the next thing which we have to do in a weekly check is checking of VHF DSC facility. From one VHF to another VHF will send a message by DSC, and same from VHF 2 to VHF 1 will send a message. Now some people do this test on weekly basis. I prefer to do this test on daily basis. Now one more thing which we can do in a VHF DSC test is to try doing this DSC test with core station if available. Now to try out this test, what we have to do, press call, enter which type of call it is. It is a ship's call, enter. So here it asks ships ID. Ships ID means your ship's MMS ID. So because I'm sending to my another VHF, so I'll enter my ship's MMSI number, enter the channel, press call button, and now from this VHF1 the call will go to VHF2. So as you can see, the call is received over here. I'll enter this, and now same from this VHF also I'll do a test to another VHF. Also you can try doing this test with 𝐶𝐒. Now the next thing is weekly entries in GMDSS record. Now as I told in my daily test video also, that some people try to maintain the records in a separate file. As you can see, this is GMDSS file. They are making daily tests, weekly test, monthly test, distress, safety, urgency message, and so on. So some people maintain such a file, but I normally prefer to make or keep the records in my GMDSS book itself. So I'll keep all my printouts in my GMDSS book itself. I don't maintain a separate file. So it is your personal choice how you would like to keep. So what I'll do, I'll tear this off, staple it over here and keep this. So just to show you, now this is 2 pages. So what I'll do is I'll staple with the carbon page over here. So that's how I maintain my or keep my records in my logbook itself. Now about the entries. So now we'll write date and time in UTC, then daily/weekly test done. Now here the entries will be similar to what we write in daily test. GMDSS batteries on offload test done, how much voltage was there, all printer checked, then printer status. Then the different thing over here is VHF DSC test done, with which core station you did the test. So you'll write that, and also I do the test with the DSC with core station. I wasn't unable to do that, so I'll write that also, that vessel in mid sea and unable to perform VHF DSC test with nearby core station. Then rest all thing is similar to daily test. Which satellite you have selected, IOR, Navtex station, which nav area you are in. Next we'll mention the VHF DSC test which we did with core station. So make sure you write the frequency on which you did the test. Many people don't write that. There have been many remarks on that. So our frequency was 8414.5 MHz. So I'm writing this. Write down the core station ID and ship's MMS ID. So this was your entry, and we'll finish with our weekly test by writing that VHF1 to VHF2 DSC test done. Also make sure to write your ship's position, which I haven't mentioned over here, but you must write. So that's it with weekly test. Now we'll move on to monthly test. So in monthly test, other than your daily and weekly test, we are going to test the following equipments as well: SAT-C, SART, EPIRB, GMDSS, walkie-talkies, Navtex, and so on. So firstly we'll start with Inmarsat-C PV test. So this is our performance verification test. So once this test is completed, you can see there will be a printout that the test is passed and all. Also on screen you can see. Next we are going to perform diagnostic test on Inmarsat-C. And now to print this out, what we have to do is press print screen on this Fruno model. And now you can see it is printing out. On JRC model, you have to see that it is on Control P. That's how you can print the screen. Next, we'll do a distress button test. So you can see over here, distress button entered into test mode. It is blinking. I'll press this, and then you can see on the screen, distress button is functioning properly. Distress button works correctly. So our distress button test is also completed. So I'll press escape. Also it is printed out. You can read out here also that distress button entered into test mode, distress button works correctly. So these 3 tests are done. Now lastly, in Inmarsat-C we'll do an email test. We'll send an email. So first we'll do open a file, make a new file, just write anything like test message on SAT-C, write your ship's name if you want. Then save this file, then go to transmit message, select your file which you have saved earlier, the test file. So that's my file. Enter your email ID. Now just to show you a demo purpose, I'm entering my personal ID, otherwise I would have selected ship's email ID. So here you can see on my mobile phone I have received the mail. So that's how we do the email test. Next we'll see the testing of SART. So this is my SART on port side, and I also have a SART on my starboard side. So we'll see the testing of one SART now. So now you can see when my third officer has switched on the SART, there have been a 12 concentric rings on my X-band radar. So now we don't have to only see the operation of SART, but we also have to check the labels, marking and expiry date. they shall be marked properly on the SART. These things also we must check. Thereafter we'll move on to EPIRB. So here also we'll do the testing of EPIRB. To test this model of EPIRB, what we have to do, press it on test site, and there we can see a white light will flash once the test is passed. So just now the white light flashed, so my test is passed for EPIRB. And here also we'll see the battery expiry, HRU expiry and markings. These things must be there and we must also check them, and I'll also record them in my GMDSS log that we'll see later on. Next is checking of antenna conditions. So monthly we must check all the GMDSS antennas, their physical conditions. We must take a proper round and check all the antennas condition. So now we'll move on to Monkey Island. There we have all the other antennas. Check there is no sign of damage, rust, corrosions. All the markings are properly there near all the antennas. So that's what we are checking now. AIS, Navtex and other antennas we have checked. MFF transceivers, VHF transceivers we have checked. So this is what we have to check monthly basis. Now the next thing is we'll try out the portable VHF walkie-talkies. So ships of more than 500 GT will have 3 walkie-talkies. Now to try these walkie-talkies, what we have to do, switch on to a channel, switch on the power, and then just press the PTT and check whether they are able to receive or transmit the calls. That's it. That's the simple test. So you can see, you can hear the sound. Now the next thing is that we must never check these walkie-talkies on channel 16. Please remember this, that there have been many observations in the past. So never check them on channel 16. Try them on channel other than 16, 13, 15, other than that. The next thing is, with each walkie-talkie will have a spare battery, spare lithium battery. We have to check for their expiry. Make sure the expiry is properly marked and they are not expired. As you can see over here, there have been observation in past that these expiry dates were not clearly visible. So make sure your expiry dates are clearly visible and they are not expired. So that's it with testing of portable walkie-talkies. Next, we'll try out AIS. So in AIS, we do a safety message test with a ship in vicinity. So best thing is to call a ship in vicinity and request them to accept your message test. So enter the ship's MMS ID, then enter the test message and then send the message. So once you transmit the message, wait for their acknowledgement. That's it with AIS testing. So message testing is completed. Now here you can see I've received a message. I'll open this, receive log, enter, and here you can see the ship has replied that message well received. They've written the name. So that's it with AIS testing. Now we'll see Navtex testing. So in each Navtex we have a self-test button. So press that test button over here. Do you want to start the test? Yes. Enter. And here you can see it has tested RAM, ROM, etc. I'll press print. It will print out. Then next press enter. And here we are doing the button test. So I'll press all the buttons. And thereafter it will take its time. And the button test is also completed. So that's it with testing of Navtex. Now lastly we'll check the battery room. So as nowadays our GMDSS batteries are maintenance free, we do not need to do any maintenance. So just enter your battery room, check there is any alarm or something, check the rubber mat is present, there is no obstruction in the battery room. That's all. There's nothing much to be checked in the battery room. That's all with monthly check. So in monthly entries, all our entries will be similar to what we write in our daily and weekly test, and then we'll add on the few extra tests which we did in monthly test. So all GMDSS batteries checked, printer checked, paper checked, we'll write all those things. Navtex monthly test done. AIS monthly test done. All GMDSS antenna checked. All 3 portable VHF. Here you have to mention which channel you have tested them on. Always test them on 2 channels other than 16, as I've mentioned earlier. Never test them on channel 16. Then we also checked for operation of SART and EPIRB. Their markings were also checked and their expiry of batteries were also checked. Then we'll write down that portable VHF battery expiry checked, VHF 1 to VHF 2 DSC test done, and vice versa. Then same thing which we mentioned in our daily test, which ocean region is selected, which nav area you are in, which Navtex station you have selected, and also we'll mention our ship's position. Then write down that GMDSS batteries physical condition checked and all found satisfactory. And we'll also mention the frequency on which we did the test on MFHF equipment and the coast station ID as well. So in the end, we'll sum up these entries by mentioning the AIS test which we did with a ship. So I'll mention its ID, and that's it. So that's it with weekly and monthly test. I hope you have liked the video. Thank you.